I did like how you said Kayla. Kayla thought you were funny.
Yeah, I know. It's surprising. I don't know. She's right. I was funny.
You are?
I can't remember how specifically, but it was funny.
I had to pretend to not laugh a lot in the last few weeks.
Welcome to Namely 90s. Wow. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right. You're listening to Namely 90s. My name's Andrew, and over there is Brandon.
That's me.
You can find us online at namely90s.com or on Twitter and Instagram at namely90s with a 90s. You can also find the show on YouTube every Monday at namely90s.com/YouTube. And if you'd like to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/namely90s with the 90s and get signed up for one of our support levels. And as Brandon was just showing you, M's postseason underway.
Oh yeah.
Not going great.
Last week, Andrew made the bold claim that by the time you heard that episode from Monday, we would be out of the playoffs.
I did
we
say
are
that.
not.
But we're about to be, and if you're hearing this next Monday. We already are.
Yeah,
unless we win game 3.
Yeah, unless we win the game on Saturday, which is after the day that we're recording this. We will be out after 2 really close games.
Let's just say they are kicking our Astros.
Yeah, and that's your name, Sportly 90s.
Sportly
Sport
90s.
Report.
Yeah, Sport
Brought
Report.
to you by Namely 90s.
I feel like based on what I've seen on like ESPN, like all sports shows are just white guys and the occasional black guy podcasting, but on video for some reason, and just arguing about football players.
I mean, up until you said the word football players, basically that was CNN as well.
Yeah, true. News Nation, by the way. Again, I literally said Newsmax like 26 times.
Andrew would like to make a
News Nation. Now, slight correction. Chris Cuomo has gone to News Nation, not Newsmax, which makes more sense.
2 separate things. This clarification brought to you by the Podcast of Horror 3 coming on October 30th here at Namely 90s. That's October 31st because there's 31 days in October.
Coming to October 30 to an October 31st near you.
All Hallows Eve Day. We're having our 3rd podcast of horror. This was like the first time we did podcast of horror was technically our first special, if you don't consider our Wocus Pocus episode.
Well, I think you had to do one of those.
Yeah.
It is numbered, isn't it?
It is podcast of horror 1. I don't think it's numbered.
I meant the other one.
No, it's not. It's a bonus.
Bonus.
So if you're looking for some bonus, go to the bonus content. But it is in this. I mean, it's in the whole
feed
list. Yes, 3rd episode technically. It's not numbered because then it would screw up your numbering system that I had to then take over.
True. Thank God you're doing it because this podcast wouldn't exist if you didn't do all that.
We're at episode 124. But really, it's almost, I think it's episode 150, technically.
Yeah, we've done a lot of freaking episodes.
How awesome is that? We've actually stuck with it for once. Oh my God, I'm not recording video.
Oh my God, we've hit the Zoom video.
Yep, we have the Zoom video.
And all of a sudden, you just went to a much better feed.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm inspired by Cobra Kai. I'm drinking the banquet beer, Coors. It's quite good.
Inspired by being cheap and not liking to have a lot of beer in my fridge, I bought a 4-pack of Slow Brew, their randomizer, and I got the big Cerveza craft lager.
Craft lager.
Mm-hmm.
I like a good old fashioned American, but actually German lager from like the early 1900s.
I mean,
made with sweet Colorado spring water.
Technically on this, it says established in 1933.
Wow.
Yeah, or 88, depending on, that might be 88. 88 makes more sense. Even though there were, people in San Luis Obispo in the early 1900s.
Good to know. That concludes your history lesson on Central Coast of California.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming to Geography 90s.
Geographically.
Feely. You got to get the feely in there.
But yeah, we were doing the podcast of horror Halloween Day, and I already forgot what it's about.
It's Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Gremlins 2. It's about horror.
Well, so I thought we could have done Hocus Pocus 2, and that was an actual slip there. Because we did Hocus Pocus last year. Andrew didn't want to do it.
No, I can't.
Then I had a nice list of actual horror movies, and Andrew's like, after first saying, shouldn't we do an actual horror film for our podcast of horror series, he then says, I don't like horror movies.
I don't.
just to piss me off.
I don't like the over the top like jump scare ones, you know.
Yeah, neither do I. I mean, I like the thrillers. I like Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, I don't mind the thriller, but I'm not into like the jump scare one, you know, where it's like
the cheap thing, where
Paranormal Activity and all that shit.
Mm-hmm. Although, so technically, some of the horror that we either grew up with as kids and going forward is considered millennial horror, where we get so far up our own asses that we have to make meta.
Is a horror that not everyone gets a trophy?
No, it's that we get so far up our own asses that we have to be metatextual, or we have to be meta about the movie itself. So the movie has to be like, oh, in the horror movies I've seen, we wouldn't split off alone because then we'd die. And so like Scream, I know what you did last summer, Final Destination, there's that extra self-awareness to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Since Final Destination, even though I never even saw the movie, like I think every time I'm following a log truck, I just imagine it immediately impaling the windshield and killing me.
Like that is the scene that most people remember. I like the first. I definitely like the first Final Destination. I might even like the second one.
I'm assuming the Final Destination is hell, by the way.
Or just all death. The characters are terrible people. The Final Destination is death, I believe. Yes.
But they're not wrong. I mean, what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, the whole premise is the kids get off the plane because some guy has a premonition, and then since they cheated death comes after them. But
when they find a 737 Max, zing!
Also, I forgot to start the timer, so I have no idea where we are in terms of time.
About 10 minutes, probably.
If you say so. And since you said that, I would like to encourage you to open up your listening app that you're listening to us on right now and punch the subscribe button. We appreciate it. And, you can watch this over on YouTube. See the beers that we're actually holding up, which are not sponsors.
I'm listening to this on the radio, actually.
Oh, yeah. We do end up on Spotify radio, technically, right? iHeartRadio. I don't know. I wasn't trying to riff off of that. Why are you listening to it on the radio?
I don't know. You're listening to smooth love ballads from the 1970s. To be fair, please write in.
I used to listen to podcasts on the radio because I had a tape deck that then broke, so I had to buy one of those like FM transmitters to plug into my phone so I could listen to something in my car.
Isn't it nice we don't have to do that crap anymore?
It's so nice. I just plug the thing into my phone and Apple CarPlay shows up on my car.
Apple CarPlay is brilliant.
It's the best.
Brilliant, I say.
It is. While we've managed to talk about nothing for 10 minutes, should we get in the episode? I think this is the one we were supposed to keep tight, and I don't see my note on it anymore.
High and tight. All right. Well, why don't you tell us what was going on in October of 1998?
All right. Travel back with me, listeners, if you will, to October of 1998. On the 2nd, Gene Autry dies of lymphoma at 91. Do you know who Gene Autry is?
Singing in the Rain?
I believe it is Singing in the Rain.
Oh, boom.
Yeah. Although I thought we already said that guy died. So, no, Gene Autry is a American. You're thinking of Gene...
Yeah, Gene Kelly. Yeah. It's on a bit.
Yeah. He is the singing cowboy. He known for he was also the Los Angeles Major League Baseball team owner. But he's a major fixture in the history of country music. Yeah. Gene Autry. On the 7th, Matthew Shepard is found beaten, bludgeoned, and tied to a fence by 2 men in their early 20s for being gay in Wyoming.
Isn't that quaint?
Yes. This sparks legislation to add homosexuality for the protection under hate crime definitions, and which did not get signed into law until October 28th, 2009.
2009. Good God. 2009.
Now that I think about it, I remember the Matthew Shepard project as something that was either in middle school or high school.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I feel like maybe My Favorite Murder did a thing on it. Maybe not.
There's something about wearing black with white gloves. I don't remember what it was, but it's sparking something. On the 8th, the impeachment trial of President Bill Clinton starts. On the 20th, Richard Pryor is awarded the first ever Kennedy Center Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. On the 21st, I found it ironic. Mark Twain Prize awarded to Richard Pryor as the first award. Twain being
no one had won it prior.
On the 21st, Yankees win their 24th World Series.
Jeez.
Also on the 21st, the Game Boy Color is released in Japan. On the 23rd, Britney Spears releases her first single, Baby One More Time. This is me formally admitting to your wife, Kayla, that she was correct. Britney Spears released a song in 1998, not 1999. On the 28th, Nolan Gould, who played Luke on Modern Family, is born. And on the 29th, John Glenn returns to space aboard Space Shuttle Discovery, making him the oldest person to go to space and never return. Sorry.
I remember this, yeah.
He did return. You remember this? Was that the one that we watched on TV in the library?
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah. I remember because there was one space shuttle launch where they brought us all into the library at our elementary school, and
then the space shuttle just explodes in front of all of our eyes. Oh, that was the 80s
and the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
That was Discovery, wasn't it?
Not in the library
No, but Discovery was the one.
I think Discovery.
Discovery was the recent one that blew up, and the Challenger was the 80s one.
Yeah, that's true.
Rip to the Max, Disco, and Challenger Cruise. TV premiering ending October 1998. On the 4th, we have Roly Poly Oly, which are words that form a television show title on Playhouse Disney. On the 7th, we have Charmed on the WB. Charmed, I'm sure. On the 19th, we have The New Addams Family on Fox Family. And on the 25th, we have The Famous Jet Jackson on the Disney Channel. And ending on the 2nd is Wishbone, Andrew's favorite PBS
what's the story,
show.
Wishbone? Ending like that?
In the box office, October 1998. On the 2nd, we have Antz.
Which is the total abomination.
Are you thinking of A Bug's Life?
It's a shameless ripoff of A Bug's Life.
Didn't Antz come out first?
Well, A Bug's Life's better.
On the 2nd, Night at the Roxbury.
Will Ferrell, Chris Kattan?
Yes. And that one song. On the 4th, Sabrina Goes to Rome. This is Sabrina the Teenage Witch, played by Melissa Joan Hart. It was the ABC TV movie.
And the same animatronic black cat from Hocus Pocus.
Yes. On the 16th, The Bride of Chucky. On the 17th, Halloween Town, Disney Channel original movie, Halloween Town. On the 23rd, we have Pleasantville, starring Tobey Maguire, Jeff Daniels, William H. Macy, Paul Walker, Reese Witherspoon, Jenny Lewis, Jane Lois from Malcolm in the Middle, Don Knotts, and Maggie Lawson. Do you remember Pleasantville?
No, but I remember the name of it vaguely. But you know what's funny? Kayla was watching something and someone was on the TV and I was like, is that the mom from Malcolm in the Middle? And she's like, it's Jamie Lee Curtis. I was
Were
like,
you watching an Activia commercial?
I don't know what she was watching, actually. She was surfing through
Halloween
movies and she found it. It looked really, it was so, whatever it was so annoying.
Halloween 2. Oh, well, so when you say really annoying and Jamie Lee Curtis in a movie, that makes me think of the 1980s classic where
it looked like 2000s.
Dan was it a Christmas movie? She's been in a couple Christmas movies. Anyways, there's when Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd get swapped. I don't remember what that movie was called. On the 27th, The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, Disney Direct to Video.
Simba's Pride.
That's the one where he blinks and has a kid. Well, technically, he had the kid already. On the 30th, American History X, featuring Edward Norton and Elliot Gould.
Oh, she was watching Freaky Friday.
With Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, but the beginning of that movie is so annoying.
And also the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis has to act like a 14-year-old girl.
Jamie Lee Curtis was in NCIS for 5 episodes? Wow.
As herself?
No.
Recurring character?
Yes.
Did you want to exposit on that more?
No, I just saw it in her IMDb filmography.
In the Billboard charts, number 1 for October 1998 for the first 2 weeks is The First Night by Monica, followed by 1 Week by Barenaked Ladies for only 1 week before giving the title back to The First Night by Monica for the rest of the month and out into November. Which of those 2 songs do you remember, Andrew?
It's going to be which song?
The First Night by Monica or 1 Week by Barenaked
1 Week.
Ladies?
Clearly, I love Barenaked Ladies, man.
I can't even remember what that Monica song is. Continuing on for the 3rd week of October 1998, at number 3 we have I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. At number 6. Even when I dream of you.
We do this every time.
Sweetest thing I'll never do, 'cause I'll miss you, baby. And Ben Affleck's gonna sleep with my daughter in a movie. Number 6, I'll Be by Edwin McCain. Oh, yeah. I'll be love suicide. Wait, love unaliving. You can't say the S word.
True.
Or else, but we don't actually monetize this, so it doesn't matter. And I'll be better when I'm older. I'd never known that was that song or by that person. I have no idea who that person is. I'll be the great. I always thought that was like
your life.
I always thought that was like a not Green Day, Three Doors Down song.
I'll be. Yeah, it's a stupid song.
Doesn't it sound like a Three Doors Down song? Like,
sure.
Like Kryptonite. Number 7, This Kiss by Faith Hill. Or as I have written, Faithful. Number 8, Because of You by 98 Degrees. Number 21, You're Still the One by Shania Twain. Number 22, Just the Two of Us by Will Smith. And at number 25, Adia by Sarah McLachlan. And if you want to hear these songs that I picked out, open up your podcasting app and click on the link to our Spotify playlist to listen to a playlist of these songs curated by yours truly.
I always remember This Kiss because it's the song that plays during the kiss cam at the hockey game. This kiss, this kiss. I've done that more than once, by the way. And only one of the times it was my mom.
I was going to say, don't you normally go to that with your parents?
No, I think it was two separate girls. One of them, which is my wife. Ooh, this is awkward. Because now she might be listening. And now let's go to Brandon for the Namely 90s Minute.
Welcome back to our mid-episode break, Namely 90s Minute. Every week we look back at a culturally relevant show, movie, or piece of pop culture that probably helps stoke the algorithm. This week, in honor of Slayers hitting theaters, we're looking back at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a 1992 comedy horror film starring Sarah Michelle Gellar, Dylan from Beverly Hills 90210, Hawkeye from the MASH movie, not the TV show, there's kind of a theme here, Pee Wee Herman, the Tears and Rain replicant Roy from Blade Runner, Dewey from Scream, The Next Karate Kid, and it's Batfleck's first film as the uncredited basketball player in the number 10 jersey. Problematic writer and director Joss Whedon wrote the movie, but its direction was out of his hands with the studio removing his usual humor and dark tones, as Buffy was supposed to burn down the gym in the finale with the vampires inside. While the movie serves as a prequel to the TV series in some ways, there are many differences between the two, like the Stargate movie and the TV series. The movie starts with the girl from Ferris Bueller's Day Off who has the explanation on why Ferris isn't in class, thank you Simone, in her senior year of high school. A rich, stuck-up popular cheerleader who is approached by the dope-smoking professor from Animal House who tells her that she is the new Slayer, the mythical vampire hunter, and he is her watcher who trains her to use her powers. Meanwhile, a local vampire king and his acolyte turn Archie's dad from Riverdale's friend into a vampire. He tries to run from town, but his former friend and the vampire gang stop him, which is when the girl that Ducky ends up with in Pretty in Pink shows up and saves him, which sparks some romantic interest between the two. During a basketball game, she notices one of the basketball players is a vampire, so they have a fight, which leads to her taking on the vampire gang and their leader. Unfortunately, the Vamp King puts her into a trance, so her watcher sacrifices himself so she can live, breaking the trance. This throws the Slayer into a depression. She realizes she's outgrown her high school clique and her boyfriend dumped her, but she ends up with Billy from The Fifth Element at their senior prom anyway. Unfortunately, an army of vampires show up to ruin the prom, but the Slayer stops them outside. Then, she and the Vampire King have it out in a final duel, which she eventually wins by staking him in the heart. Diana Palmer from The Phantom and the American Inspector Spacetime then ride off on his motorcycle. And that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer in a Namely 90s Minute. More or less.
And now, back to the show.
Anywhere you want to go?
Oh boy, you've made me quite the list here.
Well, I mean, again, the reason why I send you the notes is because you can take notes and say, oh, this would be interesting because I recognize this and would like to talk about it.
Unlikely.
I just put everything I know in case you don't.
Let's see. What is the difference between Antz and A Bug's Life?
You know, that's a good question.
Which studio did Antz come out of?
Antz was, well, I know it was a Woody, I think it was a Woody, excuse me.
Woody Allen, Sharon Stone, Sylvester Stallone, Jennifer Lopez, Gene Hackman, Danny Glover, Christopher Walken, Dan Aykroyd. Wow, what a cast.
Oh, yeah. Woody Allen was the main character. I remember, I think Antz is honestly better than A Bug's Life.
DreamWorks. DreamWorks is the one that does Shrek, right?
Yes. But this is pre-Shrek.
Steve Jobs is part of Pixar?
Yeah, he was a founding member of Pixar, I believe.
Wow.
He left before, because he went back to Apple late 90s, I want to say.
And then John Lasseter, who was obviously Me Too'd because he's a sex creep.
That's literally anyone.
I mean, he rightfully was Me Too'd, but.
Oh, you're looking at Bug's Life. I was like, what are you looking at?
Well, no, there's a feud erupted between DreamWorks co-founder Jeffrey Katzenberg and Steve Jobs and John Lasseter of Pixar.
Oh yeah, I do see that. Due to the production of their similar film, A Bug's Life. yeah, Disney refused to avoid competition. So Bug's Life came out in 1998 as well, and it came out in November 20th, 1998.
I mean, its cast isn't so bad. It's got I don't know who Dave Foley is, but Kevin Spacey, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Hayden Panettiere, Dennis Leary, David Hyde Pierce.
Dave Foley is the main character from News Radio.
Okay. Who else? John Ratzenberger, obviously. Brad Garrett,
David Hyde Pierce,
Richard Kind, Phyllis Diller.
David Hyde Pierce being Niles from Frasier.
Yes, Ashley Tisdale, and so forth.
So it's weird that Ashley Tisdale, Hayden Panettiere, and yeah.
For talking about ants, we're doing a great job of talking about A Bug's Life.
And your cousin Alex Rocco.
Oh, the music was by Randy Newman.
Shocking, a Pixar film with Randy Newman music.
Right.
But it's weird that because Ashley Tisdale and Hayden Panettiere were like what 7 when this came out.
Yeah, because they play little people, not little people, but young people. I was just the only thing I know Hayden Panettiere from, I don't know how you say it. I know her from being in the show Nashville with Connie Britton and some other people,
which came out after she was the cheerleader on Heroes NBC, which was popular around the same time as Lost for some reason. But yeah, so Antz, it is very, very similar story, but he doesn't meet a lovable traveling group of bugs.
And now, what is this movie about?
Antz, which one?
Perhaps.
Yeah. So it's about an anxious worker ant named Z, who is an anti-conformist, played by Woody Allen, and he falls in love with the princess, and basically the ant colony declares war on a termite colony. And some things happen, and I could not tell you anything. I remember Z was in love with the princess. I think the princess gets kidnapped or something, or they both get separated from their colony. I don't remember. And they have to work together to get back or something. It's not I saw it like twice as a kid.
Twice. Wow.
I think we had it on video. I want to say we had it on video. We had A Bug's Life on video. VHS. I skimming over this plot, I could not tell you what this movie is about.
I think it's funny that this whole feud erupt. Like, you're doing an ant movie too? F you. Who cares?
Or it's like, the ants in A Bug's Life were multicolored ants, and then ants in Antz were like really bad, blocky, ant-colored ants. And it was interesting.
This is weird. So Gene Hackman was in Antz.
Hackman, yes.
And the person who made the music did Antz and then did Enemy of the State right after, which is a movie that stars Gene Hackman and Will Smith. Will Smith?
Yes.
John Voight, Regina King, Jake Busey, and some other people I've never heard of. Tony Scott. Yes.
Tony Scott.
And that concludes the topic of Antz.
Yeah.
Me concluding with a spy thriller called Enemy of the State, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. I gotta watch this movie. It looks good.
Antz?
Enemy of the State. A 1998 American political action thriller film.
I figured you'd already seen it.
Positive reviews.
So, critical response, Gene Siskel enjoyed the film and preferred it over A Bug's Life. Just so everyone knows. And I think technically Antz is the tighter, more put together movie. It's just A Bug's Life was cuter.
Yeah, Bug's Life had a better aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
Antz looked kind of gross. But like DreamWorks has a different style than Pixar, you know?
True. Even though they were both just finding their styles back then anyway. Yeah. Antz. So, sorry. Every time I hear the word Antz now, I think of Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas doing the promotion for Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man movie, where they're just scatting and like playing their knees and going Antz. Have you not seen that?
No.
I'll send that to you.
That reminds me. The other day I was making a deep cut Friends reference, and people didn't understand. I was like, it's like that late season episode where Paul Rudd plays Phoebe's boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And because there was a dog named Phoebe, and I kept going, Phoebe. Do you recognize that? So late in the series, Phoebe has to meet Paul Rudd's parents, who is played by like that smarmy president guy from 24, President.
Yeah.
What's his face?
I don't remember his name, but he's like the father. He was the Secretary of State under.
No, that was
Palmer.
That was Heller. President Logan.
Oh yeah.
Played by Gregory Itzin.
Yeah, you would recognize him. He's in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but anyway, I
was like that guy.
He plays Paul Rudd's dad. And so anyway, she's going to meet the parents, and she's like she's acting rich because they're like rich. They all have that transatlantic accent, and she was like, and then
our house in the Hamptons.
Paul Rudd's like, what are you doing? I want my parents to meet Phoebe, not Phoebe. It's funny. They're like, I don't recognize that. I'm like, then you're not a true fan. Get out of here.
That is a deep cut reference. But
if I said it to Kayla, she would immediately know what I was talking about.
Well, yes, because I assume you two say that back to forth to each other a lot.
Yeah.
True.
But then she talks about the time a pimp spit in her mouth and she got hepatitis C. And then all of them are looking at her horrified, and she goes, "So where does everyone summer?" Like she goes back to a weird voice. Classic.
Lisa Kudrow was just a voice on Rick and Morty's last episode. Technically, yeah.
Yeah.
She played a dinosaur that talked. Anyway,
well, that was Antz. That was one thing. Yeah. Charmed was on the air for 26 years, as far as I know.
It's back on the air.
Oh, the same people?
No, it got rebooted as
reboot alarm.
Yeah. Two Hispanic sisters.
Latinx
sisters. Do we not say Hispanic anymore?
I don't think you say Hispanic unless they're actually from Mexico.
Yeah. Then that was accurate then.
Okay. Whoops.
And their half sister, who's half black, and because remember how they had like a secret fourth sister in the original run. Anyway, it's on the CW. I think it's gone for 4 seasons now. I'd stopped watching it after the first half season. Anyway, the original Charmed is a fantasy drama television series. It's an Aaron Spelling thing, starring Alyssa Milano, Holly Marie Combs, and Shannon Doherty. And after a fight with Shannon Doherty, she left the show, and Rose McGowan took over as their long lost half sister.
Apparently, you can say Hispanic if you're specifically concerning Spanish language speaking people.
Yes. Well, I mean, they're bilingual.
Yes, but they have to speak Spanish somewhat.
They speak
relating
Spanish.
To Spanish speaking Latin America or people of Spanish speaking descent.
Yes.
Good to know.
Yes. because you keep correcting me when I am saying it
I thought you weren't
correctly.
allowed to say it, but I am wrong. I stand corrected.
I think you're not allowed to say the gendered form of Latin.
Correct.
Anyway. Charmed. Three sisters, their mom dies or
Three?
something.
That was 2.
Sorry?
I'm thinking of Gilmore Girls. It's the same show, right?
I mean, white women talking.
Bunch of witches, if you ask me. No, they literally were witches, though.
On Gilmore Girls?
On Charmed.
Yes, they're three Wiccans. Wicca. Oh, God.
It is, just if I remember, it is unwatchable, right?
You know, there were a lot of like mid, like, you know, when you're homesick and the Price of Right is over and there's nothing else on TV, you could turn to TNT and man, would there be reruns of Charmed?
Charmed was on constantly, like syndication, man.
Oh yeah.
Tell you what.
Well, there's what, 10 seasons?
That's it?
No, 8 seasons.
I feel like there's 900 episodes of that show.
178 episodes over 8 seasons. Kaylee Cuoco eventually ends up on the show.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because Alyssa Milano was getting tired of it, or maybe it was Holly Marie Combs. One of the two originals were tired of it, and she ended up on the show.
Pepperidge Farm remembers. You say Milano, made me think of Pepperidge Farm.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then each of the sisters had their own like power. Shannon Doherty had telekinesis. And also she got astral projection. Piper was the middle sister. She had like she could make things freeze. And then Phoebe was the youngest, and she had premonition powers, and then later on she could levitate. Like
that Sandra Bullock movie, Premonition?
Yes, exactly like the Sandra Bullock movie, Premonition. And then Piper falls in love with, they have this thing called a white lighter, which is like the guardian angel guy, and then they fall in love, and then it's a forbidden love, and then the main bad guy falls in love with Phoebe, and he's also Satan or something, and oh god, it's just angels and demons and witches. Oh my. I've watched way too much of this show, if you can't tell.
He says angels and demons, like that movie with Tom Hanks. It's a Dan Brown book.
Yes, the book Angels and Demons. And then Shannon Doherty had some sort of I don't know, what would you call it? A conflict of interest? No, a disagreement with the show, and she left, just like she left 90210. I don't know if that's called a pattern, but here we are. Here we are.
We are.
I don't know. Charmed. I liked. It's a guilty pleasure. It was a guilty pleasure to watch Charmed.
Oh, okay. That's wow. Did we watch Halloween Town? No. We watched
Halloween Town,
the Pete and Pete special.
Yes, the Pete and Pete,
which was like a Halloween Town of sorts.
Halloweeny, I believe it was called.
Yeah.
No, Halloween Town is turned into, I think there are 3 of them. It's a series. But basically it's like some kids living, I don't know. Debbie Reynolds was in it. Good God.
You think when she's done acting, they're like, well, that's a Reynolds rap.
Well, wasn't she the spokesperson for Reynolds rap for like years?
I don't know.
Debbie Reynolds. Anyway, yeah, I don't know how. Halloween Town was a movie. I'm sure people jizzed in their pants that we even mentioned it.
Is Pleasantville Smallville? In my mind, they're the same show. They're not at all related.
Now that you mention it, they use the same font, I think.
Oh, okay, that might be why.
Well, because Pleasantville is a 1998 American teen fantasy comedy drama with Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon. It's one of those ones where like they get sucked into like a black and white television or something, and the town they get trapped in like a 1950s TV show in like a small Midwest town, and it's all like
Smallville uses a similar font.
Yeah, and also it's Ville.
Yeah,
and red with an outline. But it's I don't know if I've ever seen this movie all the way through, but it's. I'm
not a big fan of Jerry Maguire, Mark Maguire. What?
Sammy Sosa,
Barry Bonds,
Ken Griffey Jr.,
Kenny Loggins,
Kenny, Top Gun,
Guns N' Roses. Okay, no, I'll stop.
Axl Rose,
Truck Axle. No, okay, it's done. It's done.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me, cocked your head to the side and said, I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me saying, get that together, come back and see me. 3 days since the living room. I realize it's all my fault, but couldn't tell you. Yesterday, you'd forgiven me, but it'll still be 2 days till I say I'm sorry. Hold it now and watch the hoodwink as I make you stop think. You'll think you're looking at Aquaman. I summon fish to the dish, although I like the chalet Swiss. I like the sushi because it's never touched a frying pan. Hot like wasabi when I bust rhymes. Big like Leanne Rhymes because I'm all about value. Bert Kempferter's got the mad hits.
Rhymes and rhymes do rhyme, as it turns out.
Well, yeah, but rhymes, Leanne Rhymes is spelled differently from rhymes.
True.
Bad hits. You try to match wits. You try to hold me, but I'll bust through. Gonna make a break and take a fake, like a stinking aching shake, like vanilla. It's the finest of the flavors. Got to see the show because then you'll know the vertigo is gonna grow. Because it's so dangerous, you'll have to sign a waiver. How can I help it if I think it's funny? God damn it. How can I help it if I think you're funny when you're mad? Trying not to smile, though I feel bad. I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral. Can't understand what I mean. Well, you soon will. I have a tendency to wear my mind on my sleeve. I have a history of taking off my shirt.
It's been 1 week
since you looked at me, threw your arms in the air and said you're crazy. 5 days since you tackled me. I've still got the rug burns on both my knees. It's been 3 days since the afternoon. You realize it's not my fault. Not a moment too soon. Yesterday you'd forgiven me. Now I sit back and wait till you say you're sorry. Chicken to China, the Chinese chicken.
Stunt is a really good album, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't think I've listened to it all the way through. You have a drumstick and your brain stops ticking. Watching X-Files with no lights on. We're done.
Oh my God.
We're dans la maison. I'm hoping the smoking man's in this one. What's dans la maison? Dans la maison?
No,
you took French, right?
It's the X-Files.
Watching X-Files with no lights on. We're dans la maison.
What?
Watching X-Files with no lights on. We're dans la maison. I hope the smoking man's in this one.
I don't remember that part.
Like Harrison Ford, I'm getting frantic. The movie he's in. Like Sting, I'm tantric. Like Snickers, guaranteed to satisfy. Like Kurosawa, I make mad films. I don't make films. But if I did, they'd have a samurai. That's a Kurosawa samurai film reference. Gonna get a set of better clubs. Gonna find the kind with tiny nubs. Just so my irons aren't always flying off the backswing. Gotta get in tune with Sailor Moon because that cartoon has got the boom anime babes that make me think the wrong thing. How can I help it if I think you're funny when you're mad? Trying hard not to smile, though I feel bad. I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral, can't understand what I mean. You soon will. I have a tendency to wear my mind on my sleeve. I have a history of losing my shirt. It's been 1 week since you looked at me, dropped your arms to the side and said, I'm sorry. 5 days since you laughed and said, since I laughed at you and said you just did what I thought you were gonna do 3 days since the living room, we realized we're both to blame, but what could we do? Yesterday you smiled at me because it'd still be 2 days till we say we're sorry. It'd still be 2 days till we say we're sorry. It'd still be 2 days till we say wasabi. Birchmount Stadium, home of the Robbie. And
that song makes not a lick of sense, but so popular. And
there's parts of it that make the Harrison Ford frantic, Sting with the tantric sex, Snickers. Their tagline is guaranteed to satisfy. I will tell
you should listen to it. It's a good album. I like this album.
I mean,
it's a journey. You have Spotify? No, listen to it.
I don't use Spotify, except to make our Namely 90s weekly playlist that you can find by searching Spotify for Namely 90s playlist. You're a Barenaked Ladies fan.
I am, except for the
B&L.
song from The Big Bang Theory,
which for some reason I thought was the President's. We've already had this discussion. But it's a Canadian alt rock group.
You got a problem with Canada?
Yes. No.
What? Yes.
Of course we do. We're Seattleites and we lived under Vancouver. No,
I'm kidding. Canada.
Yeah, I've been there. Beautiful place. Gave a girl $20. She said she'd give back
to
do
me. What? Oh, okay.
I assumed she was going to buy meth.
Oh.
Not for us. She just asked me for $20. I think I was walking into a Starbucks.
And not a Tim Hortons?
I didn't understand Canadian culture back then. And there's not as many Tim Hortons in BC as there are on the East Coast. It's like the Dunkin'. Have you been to a TH in BC?
No. And that's it for this week's episode of Namely 90s. We're now talking about Canadian coffee and donut chains.
It's where the episode... do you want to talk about Halloween Town again?
No, I want to wrap.
Then you should have followed through. If that's it for this week's edition of Namely 90s, remember you can find new episodes out every Monday. Check the episode description for this week's supplemental Spotify
playlist.
I didn't realize you were mocking. I thought you were echoing. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Namely90s with 90s, or find our personal Twitter accounts at bshwitty and at NamelyAndrew, and tell us why we shouldn't drink beer when we record these episodes.
Yeah,
if you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/namely90s, also with 90s. But again, why would you? Finally, you can also contact us through our website, namely90s.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Chicken in China, Deezer, TuneIn, iHeart, Good Pods, and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Brandon, that's Andrew, and we'll catch you next time.
Yes, man.